Okay, so at this point in time, you should have already signed into SketchUp using the link that's been provided, and you've used your Microsoft credentials, so your school email address and password to get into the system. Now, when you first get onto it, you'll see a page that looks like this. Now, initially, you'll notice there's a bunch of tools on the side. We've got some other options over here, which include some really handy features that we'll look at later on. And we also have this image of a guy that is standing there staring at us. Now, what we can do is we can actually orbit around and we can change the angle that we're looking at our display. And I'm doing that by holding down my middle mouse button, the scroll wheel. So you just press that down, push it down, and then you can move your mouse around the place. And that'll allow you to look around at different objects. Now, it looks a little bit weird with this guy here initially because he's always facing the camera. So he is there to give you a sense of scale. You don't have to worry about measurements. You can be really accurate with this program, but initially you can freestyle it, you can get a bit creative, and you don't have to get bogged down by the real specifics of centimeters or inches or feet or meters or anything like that. And so the guy is there, he gives you a bit of an idea that he's about 1.8 meters tall. So it means you can model things according to that. All right, so what I'm going to do to start off with is if I use this rectangle tool over here, and I am going to drag out a shape. Now, I'm trying to draw a rectangle, but you'll notice that as I move along here, it looks a bit more like a trapezium. Now, that's just because we're in a 3D program and things disappear or they get closer together the more distant they are. So it's just using perspective. So I'm going to let go of this now. I've been holding down my left mouse button and then I've got my shape. Now, if I use that technique of orbiting around, so I press down the middle mouse button, the scroll wheel on my mouse, I can look around and see a little bit more top down that shape, and you'll see it does look a lot more like a rectangle when I look at it from this angle. All right, now I've created a two-dimensional object there. All right, so it's just a rectangle. Let's make it three-dimensional, and I can use the push-pull tool for that. So when I click on this tool, I hover my mouse over and you can see that it changes. It gets a little bit of a textured pattern on the top of it. And then I can left click and I can drag that up. And straight away, when I orbit around it now, you can see that I've got that 3D object. And it looks like a 3D object should. And this is where you'll notice a lot more the difference between the man and how he's always facing the camera and the object that is behaving like a 3D object normally would. Now, with the push-pull tool, I can also click on any of the sides and I can modify them as I see fit. All right, now I can also go back onto my rectangle tool and I can draw on the face or on one of the faces of this three-dimensional object I created. So I've drawn on there. I can use the push-pull tool again, and I can drag out or I can push in. All right, so what we're going to do now, at this point, I'm going to drag out, and I'm going to turn this weird-looking shape into something that looks more like a mallet. Now, this is a little bit out of whack with the top bit. It's far too big. So what I'm going to do is look around to this side of it, and I'm going to drag that so that it has that shape. Okay, so it's starting to look a bit more like a mallet. I might decide that the handle's a little bit too long. I could shrink that, or it's a little bit too chunky. So lots of little fine details and adjustments I can make just by using the push-pull tool. So there is a rather simple version of a mallet. And to get it to this point, I've only used these two tools, the rectangle and the push-pull. Now, if I look back a little bit and I try to get that perspective with the guy in it, you can see that this is a giant mallet. But for this task, when we're first warming up, it doesn't matter. We can keep it nice and simple. All right, so we've got a big mallet. Now, this is going to be part of your first, skill check. It's a little bit of an assessment task. And this would be about a level 1. Okay, so there's about 3 different levels of success you can do here. But there's one more thing I'd like you to do before you consider this to be a completed task, and that is that normally a mallet would have a little section that's sticking out the top here as well. Now, I could just draw another rectangle on the top there, but I don't know for sure if it's actually lined up properly with the handle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring into this another tool, which is my line tool. And if I hover my mouse, you'll see that there's different colors that appear as I go around here. So I've got dark blue for if I'm on the face, which means if I draw at that point, I'm drawing directly on that white surface there. I'm not drawing 5 meters deeper than where I think I am. It's giving me that visual feedback that I can be confident that I'm drawing exactly where I think I am. All right, if I go onto a line, you can see it turns red, and at the end of a line, it turns green to show me that I'm at an endpoint. And it also likes to snap. All right, so as I'm moving my mouse around, you'll see that it tends to kind of erratically and sort of jerkily snap onto an endpoint, which is actually really handy for this. So I know that I'm on the exact end of actually all 3 of these lines where they're merging together. So I'm going to click on that, left click, and I'm going to drag out, and I want to have my line going past the top of my mallet. And in this case, I want it to be green, which is showing me here it's on the green axis, which means it's going parallel perfectly to that green axis, which is traveling in that direction. I don't want it to be red because that is traveling down this way, and blue is going straight up in the air. You can see that on the side over here. All right, so as I look around, you can see the different axes and the directions that they're going in. So I'm going to click once to lock in that green line and making it into a normal line. And also you'll notice that my line actually wanted me to keep drawing like this. Now the way to stop it from trying to draw another line is I can just press escape. And that's a quick way to sort of terminate that tool. So I'm going to undo, just Control Z. All right, so if I look around, you should be able to see that this line lines up perfectly with this line. All right, so it's all about looking from the right perspective. So I can see it lines up that way, and if I look at it on the side, again, we should see that that's in the right spot there. So that's looking pretty good. So I have done this corner here. I'm going to go and do the opposite lower corner, which is down here. I'm going to click on there again, and again, I want it to be a green line. All right, and again, it's trying to give me the option to do another line here, which I don't want, so I'm going to press escape. All right, so at that point, I have now got 2 opposite corners of my rectangle. And what I can do is I can go back to my rectangle tool. Now, if I go to here, we'll see another line. Now, this is called the intersection point, which is where a line goes through a solid face. So if I click here, and then I go to the opposite corner, and snap to that intersection point and click, I now have that rectangle lined up perfectly with the handle at the other side. All right, so that's all I needed these extra lines for. I'm going to use my arrow tool. I'm going to select this line and I'm going to press delete. And then to make this look a little bit more authentic, I'm going to go back to my push-pull and I'm going to drag that out. All right, so with the use of my push-pull, my rectangle, my pen, or my line tool and my arrow, I have made a really simplistic looking mallet. Okay, so that's a level 1. Now to get a level 2, you're going to do a little bit more work here. I'm going to use my pen tool. I'm going to, let's see, I'll do it from about here. I'm going to draw a line from that edge straight down to this edge. Now my line is blue, which means it's lining up with my up-down axis, okay, my y-axis. So I'm going to click there. Now, from that endpoint, I'm going to go to the top corner, and I'm going to do a similar thing to the bottom. So from there to that endpoint. Now, I'm going to go back to my arrow tool, and I'm going to start deleting some of these sections that have got bits that I don't want anymore. All right. Now at this stage, when I change my angle, you'll start seeing that this is starting to look a little bit more like an authentic angle of a mallet. We normally don't have them being perfectly 90 degrees. We have a little bit of an obtuse and an acute angle on it. Yours doesn't have to be as extreme as this, but what I'd like to see for a level 2 result is that you've done something like this on both sides. All right. Now, a level 3 is a little bit more open-ended. For a level 3, what I'm expecting to see is some round, curved edges. All right, so we're not going to be dealing with all these straight edges everywhere. Because if you think about it, if you have a mallet and you've got this really sharp edge here, that's not going to be very comfortable at all to use. Now, in this section here, where we normally call that our kebab menu, we've got a whole bunch of different options with different types of arcs and curves. Now, what I'd like you to do is experiment with that a little bit. All right, can you get a nice smooth curve in your corners? And something that might help you to achieve this well would be almost doing a second mallet. So this time, I'm going to create another rectangle there. And my suggestion would be, with one of these curve tools, see if you can get your corners nice and curvy around here, deleting the extra bit before you use the push-pull. All right, it's much easier to get your nice curves on a flat two-dimensional shape before you start trying to tackle this on a three-dimensional shape. All right, so flat 90-degree mallet is level 1. Having a bit more of an angle on the top parts of your mallet is a level 2. And doing a little bit of an experimentation with your curves and circles and seeing if you can get like a rounded handle and a little bit of a softer edge around the edges of your mallet would be a level 3. So that's your warm-up task for this. And then after we've finished working through this, we will be focusing on starting to get a house plan and make that or turn that into a 3D model. Okay, so good luck and yeah, see what you come up with.